All right, everybody. Welcome to the Social Dig, the greatest underrated show on the World Wide Web. I am your host, Mr. Rob G. And as always, we'll be digging into the topics to keep you talking and the talk that keeps you thinking. It's been a long time. Gotta knock the cobwebs off, man. Just glad to be back here. And I'm also glad to have my guy back here, man, Mr. Mateo. How you doing, Mr. Mateo?
I'm doing very well, my friend. How about yourself? Good to see you. Hope you enjoyed your cruise to U.F.O land, and I know you're going to talk about that later. I'm doing good. I'm all geared up for my underdog South Florida teams.
They still in it, huh?
The Panthers are going to go to the big dance.
What?
We're in Stanley Cup final, and
nice.
The Heat are playing right now, trying to get their ticket to the NBA final.
True. I'm rooting for the Heat right now. I don't have a dog in the race anymore, so
LA's gone.
Might as well go with my guy Mateo, man. Might as well go.
Yeah, man. South Florida is where it's at. We're all hyped up over here, so that's why I'm geared up. But anyhow, no, it's good to be here. I'm happy we're doing the show. Great topic choice tonight. So I'm ready to rock with you.
Yeah. So we're going to get into the groove. We're just going to ease ourselves in. What I want to do first is kind of just show some couple pics from my trip to Catalina Island, the U.F.O hotspot. And spoiler alert, no UFOs were captured in this. But I did spend a lot of time out. I took a cruise, spent a lot of time out on the deck at night, and it's pitch black dark, and I'm just looking for lights. I saw some lights, fishing boats, turned out to be fishing boats, so nothing anomalous. But it was a great trip. Go ahead and show you a couple of these nice pictures here. So they call this building the casino building out there in Catalina. So just nice. beautiful. The island's beautiful. The people are so nice. If any of you guys out there ever get a chance to go to Catalina Island, I definitely recommend it for sure. Let's see here. I got a couple other pics here. Just beautiful. Exactly. That's what I said. I was like, wow. This is before I went ahead and actually went over the shore. But this, if you look at some of those the old UFO videos over on Catalina Island, this is the backdrop.
That's the scene, yep.
This is the scene.
Harbor where
same mountains.
Comes in. Yep.
The same mountains, but like I say, nothing anomalous. And obviously, this is a tour or a cruise, so they're not going to let you go too far off the beaten path. There are a lot of parts of the island that were inaccessible. So, I would like to go back in not as a tourist, but more so to try to see if I'm able to be guided around the island. So. But other than that, the weather was perfect. High 70s, maybe 80 degrees at the most, slightly overcast. And let's see here. Let me show you this here. This is actually the Wrigley building from the Wrigley's Gum. Yeah. So this is the mansion that he actually built at Catalina Island.
Family mansion, yep.
Yeah, so I was right there, almost at the front door. If you look right below the mansion, you can see a road going across. So I traveled on that road, and it takes you to the foot of the mansion. So it was actually pretty neat. And this is what we're going to get into today. So without further delay, let's go ahead and jump into our disclosure news. All right. And today, with our disclosure news, I wanted to actually touch on a few things. So, what we're going to do is go ahead and start out with a story that I came across. I know I talked to you about this, Mateo, earlier, and you said you weren't familiar with the story. But apparently, on Monday, in two different parts of the world, they had UFO sightings, and Taiwan and Turkey, and actually had the airport had to shut down flights for like a period of 12 hours. So let me go ahead and kind of read that. That actually came up on this story today. So this is what we're looking at here. So on Monday, a China Airlines pilot spotted a UFO near the Taiwan International Airport, halting all flights for nearly an hour, according to Focus Taiwan. The Taiwan International Airport company could not determine whether the object was a drone or something else entirely. This is on the heels of a prior UFO sighting over southeastern Turkey on Saturday that led to Gaziantep. I'm just murdering these names here.
No.
Ogazeli International Airport suspending flights for 12 hours from, and this is a excerpt from New Straits Times. A commercial aircraft which landed at the airport around midnight reported that it had spotted on its radar an unidentified object at a height of 9,000 feet over the city of Gaziantep, said the authorities. Upon receiving the report from the pilot, air traffic control authorities ordered all scheduled flights to be diverted to airports in Adana and Salorfa instead. Turkish news website Haberturk, meanwhile, reported that the unidentified object was also confirmed by air traffic controllers. So I know we talked about that briefly, but what were your thoughts about that? I mean, it's kind of crazy, a couple airport sightings. If we get a few more of those, especially if those happened here, this would probably be a huge deal. What do you think?
I'm surprised it didn't get mentioned anywhere else. 12 hours, bro, for a national airport, international airport to shut down is a long time. That causes huge disruption in the whole area, right? And because it affects flights from other airports, of course, connecting through there. So that's a disaster for 12 hours. So I don't know why this didn't get mentioned. Are there any details about the craft, the nature of the craft, or what the heck it was? Was it like the Chicago O'Hare incident, or what was it?
No details. They were pretty. I mean, these are not like the New York Times or any of these type of outlets. So the reporting on it was kind of vague. I know they did state. I did go and read the New Straits Times, and they stated pretty much that they didn't say that it was an actual UFO. They stated they wrote it off as drones. But see, when you get to other countries like that, they're not. They're just like here. The interest isn't to point out what they think it was, but more so to kind of brush it off and play it as if it wasn't anything else. The only thing that they could say for sure, that they would say for sure, is that it was considered an unidentified flying object. So UFO by those terms. So yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, it was kind of interesting, and you always, with those third, I guess third rate sort of reporting outlets, you kind of want to go with the grain of salt sort
Take
of
it with a grain of
approach.
salt. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, if
yeah.
maybe other witnesses will come forward, and maybe there'll be some pictures that emerge. I mean, come on, it's an airport.
I
Everybody's
would
got their
hope
phone in
so.
their hand. You'd think everybody would be taking a picture if something was going on.
I would
So
hope so. Now
let's
I
hope.
know with one of those two incidents, they said the air traffic controllers also confirmed seeing whatever it was on radar. So they
Mm,
had a second form of validation as far as one of those sightings went. But it's something to put on the board there, because as far as we already understand going forward, we have to collect our own data. So this is just a data piece for us to put on the board. Maybe there'll be other sightings from other airports, but I'm just glad that airports and pilots are actually, reporting these things. So I guess that's the biggest takeaway.
Yep.
Now, that as far as that goes, so that was just a story that I came across, but I did want to go ahead and get into just more on Chuck Clark. Chuck Clark was the guy. If you guys remember, a few weeks ago we talked about on the last show. James Fox had done the interview with Joe Rogan, speaking about the videotape that this guy had of a UFO, and Logan Paul had actually gone there on his own, offered the guy 100K to purchase the video, but he would not sell it. And he supposedly secretly videotaped or button videotaped this UFO video. Now that story kind of faded away, but I went to James Fox's Twitter account, and he actually had linked an interview, I guess, that Chuck Clark had done right after this came out a few weeks ago. And he had stated to the person interviewing him that he no longer has the video in his possession, but that he facilitated having the video go to someone else's possession, so he knows where it's at. Now, I didn't think too much of that, but then I started looking into Chuck Clark because the name rang familiar, and I had found some other stuff on him, and it kind of made me think about how deeply he might be tied into some of this UFO stuff. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, he's just a crazy guy, Area 51. There's really nothing there." But Chuck Clark, just so you guys know, back in 2000, he had done an interview with CBS. I guess it was a written article, and just a little excerpt from that. This is what they state. They quoted this. They state that Chuck Clark is so serious about aliens, he raced over to the Little Alien, which is the little restaurant in Rachel tourist spot, to show us a video of alien activity. So we waited anxiously as he popped the cassette into the VCR. Then, in the next few minutes, we witnessed a bunch of Joshua trees, and then a scene where the video camera was in a guy's hand in the blackness of night, and he and another guy whispered things like, "There it is," and "Don't move." So if you recall, this is pretty much what the story James Fox tells regarding what he saw on that videotape. Now, this is back in 2000. So this is he roughly, I guess, 5 years after Chuck Clark came into possession of that videotape. So what that shows is that he was attempting to get that video shown to major outlets, trying to get the video out there. So he didn't just sit on this video for 20 years, 30 years. He actually tried to get this out. CBS took a look at it. And obviously, at the time, we already know how the media's stigmatized, which this is what the show is about today, how the media with the stigma didn't really take him too seriously. And they kind of joked about the whole thing, stating they made a quote say powerful images, I thought, in kind of a joking manner. So they didn't take it seriously, although he did try to take this to the mainstream media right back when he originally got the tape. So I thought that was interesting. Another thing was, if you see on the screen here, is the Area 51 and S4 handbook. So this is actually pamphlet that Chuck Clark authored. And he revises this, or there's revisions every single year. And actually, Tim Senor recently had gone to Las Vegas last week with the Spaced Out Radio crew. And I guess they ended up going to Area 51, and he ended up with a signed copy of this Area 51 S4 handbook. Apparently, he actually met Chuck Clark. So I don't know what the details were on that. I'd love to have Tim chime in and kind of give us some more info on that. Did you hear? Did you hear anything about that, Mattel?
I just heard it now. Tim was texting me. He's listening in on the show, and he sent a picture of his of the book.
Okay, well,
So
shout out to Tim Senor out there. Yeah, I did. I saw he did, and I was like, that's just a coincidence. I was watching it last night, and I saw he had this book, and I was like, ah, man, we're gonna be talking about that. So yeah, I'm glad that Tim chimed in on that.
yeah, Tim just texted. He said he didn't meet Chuck.
Oh, he
But
didn't meet him. Okay,
he got a signed copy of the book.
okay,
And
and he has a more current version, as
yeah,
you
the
see
one that
here.
he sent me a picture of, I was going to put it up on the screen. You really can't see much, but it's the
Let me see.
2019 version. It
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
won't
exactly.
focus. It says edition 2019, 2019 edition, and the where yours says 2000 edition.
2000, right? So he's revising this, so this gets revised every year. It looks like.
Yep.
So it goes, it goes a lot deeper. And not only uh, was he involved in putting this together, but he actually had done an interview back in 1995. So he's been talking with the LA Times. He's been talking to a lot of media outlets over the years that he's been out there, and he just said something that kind of rang, that kind of rang true with me, and it's a great point. He stated back in 95 that at foreign adversarial countries have satellite images of Area 51, but for some reason the base is secret to the American public. Like for some reason, this whatever is going on over there, they want to keep it secret from the American public. However, you have foreign countries that have access to take images of this. They won't even show us pictures. The American public wish our tax dollars go to pay for these things and fund these things, and we can't even just get a nice picture of what Area 51 looks like. They won't even let us see that. So I thought that was pretty on point. Now, with all that, when you look at that, you look at the Area 51 and S4 handbook, which they can't be happy that he's doing this if it's something that they're trying to keep secret. But I also came across something back in 2003. Now, this is really interesting because this is where I knew I had heard his name before, because I had actually watched this video a while back, and he was actually raided by the FBI back in 2003 because he had uncovered motion sensors that the government were putting on public land, which apparently is a no-no. Apparently, they're not supposed to do that. They're not supposed to put surveillance equipment and things like that on BLM land. So this was an interview that he did back in 2003 when he found these sensors, and then the subsequent raid came after this. This was reported by George Knapp and Channel 8 News in Las Vegas. So let's take a look at that.
FBI agents have confirmed that a search warrant was served last night on the home of a self-described military watchdog in the tiny town of Rachel, near the mysterious Area 51 military base. It's an exclusive story you will only see here.
We've learned this action was initiated by the Joint Terrorism Task Force. The search warrant remains sealed, and the FBI won't say what was seized from the home of Rachel resident Chuck Clark. We believe the action was taken because Chuck Clark escorted the I-team on a tour of the roads surrounding the base. During the visit, he showed us the location of military sensors hidden on public land. Here's our story.
I found 31 or 32 of them so far.
Retired astronomer and desert rat Chuck Clark has a new hobby. He's prowled the hills and deserts of Lincoln County for several years now, has photographed exotic aircraft in the skies, and keeps an eye on the top secret base known as Area 51. He's even written a book about the place. Over the past few months, he's discovered the military has been installing secret sensors on public lands surrounding the base. Using a frequency counter, he can tell when his vehicle has tripped the sensor. When that happens, he looks for the hard-to-spot wire atop the device.
This is our sensor right here.
Then he digs them up, takes pictures, and puts them back.
There's your transmitter right there. And we'll come around here. And right here will be the time delay unit. and you'll see it's clearly marked U.S. government property.
Clark isn't a terrorist or spy, but is angered that hikers, four-wheelers, or photographers, anyone who uses the backcountry, is being monitored by the military on public land, miles from the boundary of the base, a boundary which is clearly marked by ominous signs.
It's a little overkill, in my opinion. They have about a 25-mile buffer zone out here, and it's all terrain like this. It gets rougher as you go. Why they have to put stuff outside the line, it escapes me.
During the I-Team's visit last week, 2 sensors were located, and base security wrote down the plate numbers of our vehicles. We returned 5 days ago and drove to the rear entrance of Area 51. 3 days after our visit, FBI agents working with Air Force Intelligence and the Joint Terrorism Task Force raided Clark's home in Rachel and seized photos, records, and his computer. Is it legal for anyone to touch military sensors hidden on public land? The government doesn't think so, although Clark hasn't been charged with anything. Is the military trying to silence this outback gadfly?
They're sort of paranoid about this location, and I don't see why.
We asked the BLM if it's legal for the military to put sensing devices out on public land, but a spokesman couldn't answer our question. Law enforcement sources say that by handling the sensors, the devices become disabled, so it amounts to destruction of government property. As we mentioned, Clark has not been charged. He was out of the state when the warrant was served. Our investigation of the issues involved will continue, and we should emphasize the involvement of the Terrorism Task Force does not mean that terrorism in a classic sense is involved. It's just that these kinds of matters fall under the task force purview.
Yeah, a bigger and bigger umbrella it's becoming.
So it's kind of crazy. What do you think about that, Mateo? What is your opinion on that?
Well, back in 2003, and by the way, I just got another text from our friend of the show and ufologist extraordinaire Tim Senoy. He said he may join with us a little bit.
Yeah,
so,
definitely. Come on in, Tim.
Yeah, he's busy at the moment, but he's taking care of some stuff at home, but he might join in. You know what's going on here? Think about it. 2003, this is like just post 9/11, right? So this is when the government started to really crack down on, it really pushed the envelope when it came to privacy rules and our own civil rights, if you will, right? They really started to infringe upon privacy and civil rights. So this doesn't shock me one bit. And Chuck here was basically pointing out the glaring fact that, why does 25 miles away from Area 51 have to be monitored? Come on. So that was his point. And as you indicated, the FBI and the government did not take kindly to that at all. And they raided him and basically in an attempt to silence him, right? If you got this guy who's obviously he's pretty smart and pretty intelligent and pretty determined, you're not going to let that persist and expose you. They had to come in hard and hit him over the head pretty hard and try to stop him, which they didn't succeed, but that's why they did it. And it's sad because it's basically pointing out the fact that the government has no respect for our privacy or civil rights, and Chuck was pointing that out, and they didn't like that. It's my take.
Yeah, and the thing is that, I think when the whole James Fox thing came out and people laughed off the video and the possibility of what it was, because Logan Paul came back and said he wasn't really confident in the video, and there was a lot of, and no one has even seen this video as far as the ones who made a comment.
Seen it. Yeah, they published it. James Fox and Logan saw it. That was really.
So when you look at, when they just laugh off Chuck Clark as if he's just some kooky guy out there who is trying to put on some type of hoax, and I just wanted to show that he actually has a deeper, how deep he goes into trying to find the truth on things. And so a guy like this who was willing to go and uncover the fact that the military was putting sensors on public land and then standing behind being raided or just going with the consequences, you know, I would it gives some credence to this guy and some credibility to this guy.
Absolutely. I get your point now. It's not Chuck himself that is really being debunked or kind of belittled. It's the expose itself of his video from people who came 20 years later who unfortunately kind of made it look bad and did make it
Right.
the source of make him the source of ridicule. So
Like,
I
oh,
agree
he's
with
been
you.
holding on to this video for 20 years. Oh, he hasn't done it. Oh, who
Exactly.
is this guy? And he just all of a sudden has this video. No, the guy actually tried to get this out to the media outlets back in the year 2000. He's been by the Area 51 S4 handbook. He's a guy who is deeply into finding the truth and uncovering things that the government may not want him to uncover. And
Right.
that goes right along with the UFO topic. So
Yep.
we're going to get into more because if you recall, there was another gentleman who was raided by the FBI over Area 51. And guess what? These guys are friends, best friends. So in 2022, not even a year ago, back in November, there was Jorg Arnu, who actually ended up being raided by the FBI. It was November 3rd of 2022. And I'm going to run a story, and this might refresh your memory on that, and then we can talk a little further.
Jorg Arnu runs a blog covering the U.S. military base in Nevada, long known as Area 51. The website is dreamlandresort.com. Arnu has written extensively on his blog about Area 51's connection to government black projects. In November, Arnu's two homes in Rachel and in Las Vegas were raided by more than a dozen armed agents from the FBI and the Air Force's Counterintelligence Division. Arnu told us that the search related to images he posted on his website. Jorg Arnu is an expert, as we said, in Area 51, and we're happy to have him join us tonight. Jorg, thanks so much for coming on. So given that we have freedom of the press in this country and you're allowed to report on whatever you want, what was the pretext for the government coming to your house with guns?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show.
Of course.
I believe the reason for this search was that supposedly I took photos of Area 51, or I published photos of Area 51 on my website, which is something I have done for 20 years. Without anyone really taking issue with that. And all of a sudden, this thing comes out of the blue, crashing down on my homes. I really still don't have an explanation. I can't get a hold of anyone. 3 doors were kicked in. A country gate was busted. My girlfriend was dragged out of the house in Las Vegas. I was dragged out of the house in Rachel. And nobody can give us any answers.
So when you came to this country, I don't know where you're originally from, but I can see that you're an immigrant to this country. Did you imagine that people with guns could just show up at your house, take things from your home, physically manhandle you, and you'd never get answers as to why they were doing it?
Absolutely not. I would have never expected this. If you would have told me 3 months ago that this could happen, I would have said absolutely impossible. I am really shocked that this can happen to a cooperating, innocent senior citizen who is really just looking for a peaceful retirement and who has a little hobby on the side to run a blog about Area 51. That's all I'm doing. Part of what I'm doing on my website is actually telling people how to stay out of trouble. There's directions on the website so that people know where they can go and where they cannot go. So in fact, I'm trying to kind of help the government, keep the loonies out of there. When we had this crazy Storm Area 51 event, I spoke up against it. I was all for the government. We are not, the group around my website is not about exposing any secrets. We want to spread the word about how fascinating the military aviation is, the world of black projects, and we try to get a glimpse of what's going on. That is fascinating for us. We are not out to sell our stuff to the Russians or to the Chinese or to whoever. That's not us. That's not me. And yes, I am totally shocked that this can happen. To some degree, I have lost a little bit of faith in the justice system in this country, and I would really like to know who is behind this.
Yeah, you would. Most people who intersect with the justice system lose faith in it fairly quickly. Last quick question. Have you been charged with anything?
I have not been charged with anything. I cannot get a hold of anyone at the FBI. I have actually hired a lawyer who similarly cannot get a hold of anyone at the FBI. The only reaction I got was when I filed to be reimbursed for the damages to my homes. I very quickly got it denied. That was all I got. And I would like to get my property back, $25,000 in damages and my property that was seized. I have about $6,000 in legal damages. So I've actually started a GoFundMe page. And if anyone is so inclined, I would appreciate some help. The link is on my website. I don't know what's going on. I want to know what's going on, but nobody's talking to me.
I'm not an attorney, but I don't think the FBI is allowed to trash your house and steal things from you without charging you with the crime. So I certainly hope you prevail. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. U.F.O. Garneau.
Thank you very much.
Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens stories.
Yeah. So interesting, right? I mean, coincidence? 20 years apart, these guys get raided by the FBI. No charges come in either case to this point. And just to actually give you a quick update on what he said here. Yeah. So this interview was done right after the raid back in November of 2022. So as of May 3rd, because he has actually a GoFundMe, you can see right there on his Dreamland Resort website that we're showing up on the screen. So he says, as of May 3rd, today it has been 6 months since the unjustified FBI raid of our homes. The FBI still will not talk to us or even honor the search warrant that requires them to provide me with a copy of the data on my seized computers. You read that correct. They are in direct violation of the federal judge's orders who issued the search warrant. For the last 6 months of our lives have been hell, dealing with the destruction in our homes, the loss of 20 plus years worth of photos and other memories on the computers they stole from us, the embarrassment of our neighbors thinking we are drug dealers, the constant waiting to maybe finally learn what, if anything, they are holding against us, the long nights recreating tax records and other information that was lost with my computers, not to mention the more than $32,000 in financial losses so far. How do you feel about that? I mean, what do you think about that?
This is a tragedy. I mean, this guy's he's a naturalized U.S. citizen, came here, got his citizenship, has all the faith in the world in the country, and then he just got stabbed in the back like anyone, like worse than anyone. And yeah, I mean, if you think about it, so they had a search warrant. They're legally obliged to tell you why, and then yeah, he not only did they took his computers. If somebody stole my computer with all my work on it, besides your taxes and all of your financial records, it would be devastating, right? So I can totally appreciate his upset. And you heard him in the interview with Tucker Carlson. He's just like Chuck Clark. He's a very intelligent guy who's got a passion and an interest in this field and investigating what's going on at Area 51. He's very forthright about the fact that he's not trying to expose military secrets to anyone else. And this happens. Once again, it's the government's, I think it's a scare tactic, Rob. I really do. I think they're just trying to intimidate people from even going here, right? These guys are passionate about it and they get a little following and they're doing it for fun and a hobby and whatever else they might get out of it. Government's like, nope, we can't have that, and we're going to intimidate you until you stop. And if by intimidating you, we will prevent other people from getting the same idea. I honestly think that's what's going on here.
And truthfully, right after the Chuck Clark incident, I want to say that happened in 2003, and I want to say 2006 is when he's threw up his hands and said, "Forget this," and left the Area 51 area because of the harassment by the government. And so
Mission accomplished.
now here's the thing.
Right?
He did say, like stated in the interview that he had done recently here, right after the James Fox interview, he stated that he no longer has the tape. He was asked if he has the tape. He said he facilitated it going to where it currently resides, and he wouldn't speculate on where that was. So, was the raid of Jorg Arnu, his friend, potentially part? Were they looking for that tape? Now, he doesn't know what they were looking for, right? Because he knows what he's posted on his website, and he said there's nothing really on there, so why would you raid that? So we know, and this is just in contrast. If you go and talk about Bob Lazar, why he keeps being raided by the FBI, because they, in theory, a lot of people try to say, "Oh, that raid was fake, it was staged." Corbell and others say that it actually happened. So if they did actually raid Bob Lazar, we understand they were probably looking for the element 115 that he talks about. So they were looking for something that he had. So in this case, in the Chuck Clark case, they accused him of stealing a sensor, and that's why they claim they raided him. Why did they raid Jorg Arnu? Is it because he had the tape? So does that lend validity to the tape that everyone is talking about? And it's just speculation.
And he is friends, and it could have very well ended up in his possession because Chuck Clark thought it would be safer there.
And it's obvious that something's important enough related to these guys for them to come out and raid.
Oh yeah.
So the government entities that come in and do the raid feel that there's enough reason and justification to do that. They're not just raiding everyone. We all talk about UFOs and Area 51 and those types of things. They're not raiding us, but they are raiding these guys. So it just takes me back, and the reason why I wanted to cover it is because I think people just glanced over the whole, "Oh, Chuck Clark, who is that? He's just a guy with the tape," and really didn't pay attention to how deep these guys are actually into being on the government's radar. So,
and you've highlighted the connections here. You've highlighted the connections between these two people and how it could be related. And
it's very possible.
And they both have something the government wants. Clearly, they both uncovered something that the government does not want out. And they may be using excuses. They may blame Chuck Clark, say, "Oh, you took one of the motion sensors." They could give a darn about that. They were after something else. And then in Jorg's case, they were after the tape, even though what he's published and what he had on his computer and what his whole policy is to not expose any military secrets. They don't care. They were after the tape or whatever else they know he had, because I'm sure whatever conversation he had with Chuck Clark, they know all about it, right? So
exactly.
I agree with you. There's the cover up and the intimidation and obfuscation by the U.S. government is alive and well, my friend. And so that's what's happening here.
Here's what I'd say. I mean, go and support his website. Just go and view what he has on the web. You don't have to financially support the guy, but just go see what he posts. Might have some interesting stuff there. As you see right there, he put a highlight there. It says freedom of speech under attack. The FBI wants to shut us down for unjustified raids and false accusations. So the guy is still posting throughout all this. He's being brave enough to understand that he may be still the target, and he's still willing to put out information that they may not want us, even though I don't see it being harmful, because like I stated before, Chuck Clark made the great point of foreign adversaries have satellite photos of Area 51. We can't have an image of it, and it's something that we pay for. So just thought that was pretty crazy. But with that being said, there were other things that have been going on recently. Obviously, everyone knows about the 29 Palms U.F.O. that came out with the Weaponized podcast just this past Monday. Corbell and George Knapp presented this as a case of a craft over a military installation in 29 Palms. They also played audio tape or audio of Marines that were talking about the sighting and what they saw, what they observed. You had the guys on the tape saying, "Oh, these can't be flares." Talking about how long they were in the air. I know you have to be familiar with this story.
Oh yeah, yes indeed, and the rebuttals there too. I'm also familiar with,
because immediately the debunkers came out, as they should, as they, like I say, I'm open to skeptics and skepticism, and Mick West did come out, and we find out that there was actually potentially training exercise going on at that base that day. There was video that had surfaced that the DoD had released, and Mick West took that video, took this image, superimposed the lights onto what appeared to be flares in the video, in the military release video, and matched them up and essentially said, "Look, this is exactly what you guys were looking at. These were flares. These were not craft. These were flares." A lot of people came back and rebutted that. So they said, "Okay, well, it would appear that they just released this video, this military video, after he's made this announcement." And Mick West was able to point out that no, this was actually has been on YouTube since 2021. And I did go back and verify that video was posted on someone's page back in April of 2021. So with that being said, what did you think about the rebuttals to the debunkings?
Well, here's my take. The whole duration of the event was about 10 minutes, and the motion of the lights was even cited to be independent, right? There was indication that the lights were moving with respect to each other. So it's not a solid craft. And what appeared to be a body of craft in between the lights could have very well have been some of the smoke, right? Or something, an optical effect of the lights themselves inside the rough triangle or U shape that it had formed. Rob, in this particular case, given that there was a military event going on at the same time that's clearly documented, and it's a 2-year-old story, I just have a hard time. I kind of think it's like, well, this probably was a military exercise, and those probably were flares given their behavior. And
Right.
10 minutes is, I don't know. I was actually going to research that before the show. I think flares can burn for that long, and
Well,
try and stay suspended as long as it's not in a in a hurricane force wind. So anyway, that's my feeling. I didn't think that the video itself that Weaponized presented had enough meat behind it and enough
yeah.
substantiating evidence behind it to prove that it wasn't flares. And then the rebuttals, of course, clearly exposed the fact that there was a documented exercise going on. This one's a tough one, but I'm tending to lead toward the prosaic explanation on this one just because of what I saw.
I'm with you on that. I mean, that's how I felt. I said to myself, when Mick West came out with I'm like, hey, Mick West, you got it. I mean, this does align. I like we always say, middle of the road, and we can go either way. And the evidence that was presented by Jeremy Corbell was not enough evidence to lead me that way. And Mick West did make a great case for this. And I when I originally watched, because this has been fast-paced situation. I mean, the rebuttals and the debunking has been going back and forth. So even with that, what they came back and said, like I stated last, that this video was released recent, just after the announcement. So they another conspiracy theory. Now, I had questions about that, so but they answered them though. So my questions were, let's see, my questions were, well, and which might still be a valid thing to look at, and it was just weird that the DOD was so quick to be able to answer to this.
Oh, yes.
Susan Go just signed off on this immediately.
That was odd. I found that very strange that it got the attention of them to even chime in on this. That was interesting too. It's like, whoa.
So, I mean, and the question I have is like, well, why don't you sign off on the other things that when it really comes to UAP, why aren't you so quick to answer to those things? So her responding so quickly further probably leans to the fact that this was simply flares and simply a military exercise. Now, the other thing that I would ask, and I've seen people in the Twitter comments going both ways on this, but as far as the Marines who gave these statements, they stated that they shot off illumination rounds above these flares. So the question, and I couldn't find an answer on this, but the question I would have is, did they do that in response to these lights being in the sky, or was that simply part of the operation? And it could simply be just that. Let me go ahead and stop for a second. I see we got some comments in here. Oh, we got some Kira I am. Hey, Kira.
Yeah. Welcome.
Kira is in the house. Dogface is in the house. Grandmaster UV is in the house. Thank you guys for coming. But yeah, looking at that, I just question that. So, and the Marines themselves, would they be aware of a military exercise going on the base that they're on? Is it possible that could take place and they wouldn't know that this was going on in such a big exercise? That's the only question that I have.
Yeah, that was weird.
It doesn't make sense.
No,
like, how could these guys be on the base and not know that there's an exercise taking place and even be able to mistake this as UAP? They would have to know, I would think. So if there's a way that could go under the radar and they wouldn't know, please let me know, because that's the only thing that I can think of that just does not make sense at all.
The video that was released as part of the government acknowledgement, where the historical video wasn't recently released. It was there, the video that the Black Vault and John Greenwell found, showed that the exercise was quite extensive, right? There were all kinds of aircraft involved in this, helicopters and planes, etc. This was no small scale exercise. So to your point, goodness, if you were on this base, you probably couldn't have hidden from this exercise. You would have known it was definitely going on. Now, in the video, these Marines were off base at the time, obviously, right? Because they were watching this from the same vantage as the other witnesses, right? Or I may have that wrong. But
yeah, I'm not sure. Now that could make a difference.
It's unclear what was going on here. So yeah, it's muddy and foggy at best. And
well, Kira says she thinks that this was a military craft, triangle shape. So, the way that I went into it originally, before other information came out, was that, and truthfully, I mean, if we put our conspiracy hats on, we could say that it was a UAP event, and they immediately put out this video knowing that some things are being FOIA'd nowadays, and that people are asking questions, so that the moment that this word would have gotten out, they would have needed to have something that they could present that would explain what happened over this base. That's putting your conspiracy hat on. And I think if, you would need more evidence, I think, to go with that. But it is a plausible thing today because, as we know, with John Greenwald doing all these FOIAs, that things are being uncovered all the time through FOIA, and they hate that they made that mistake, that they left that on file, or they didn't position that a different way, because the FOIAs released the raw data. You know what I mean?
Yes. Here's another theory that I had too. This could have been a reenactment of what I call the cover-up that took place during the Phoenix Lights incident. Because at the Phoenix Lights incident at 8 to 8:30, there was a structured triangle craft that tons of people saw. And it was at 10 to 10:30 that the flares got dropped that ended up monopolizing every news video feed from the whole region, and for the past 25 years. Those were the 10 o'clock stuff was definitely flares. It was
Right.
the 8:30 stuff that was the real deal. And I honestly think the military staged what went on at 10:30 as an
Right.
excuse to
Good
cover up
point.
the real deal at 8:30. This
Good
is the
point.
part about the Phoenix Lights that doesn't get talked about very much. Guess
Good
what?
point.
That could have exactly happened here. It's
Yeah.
possible because we don't have a good time frame, and maybe the video that was released was that of the flares that came later. Maybe
And
there was a structured craft that was lit up similarly, right, with 5 lights or whatever prior to that. And now they're like, oh crap, somebody saw it, do a flare exercise. And you do
right.
a flare exercise, and then of course Susan and the gang can get on and say, yep,
Which
that was a military
which
exercise.
could explain why all those the Marine reports that he saw all those vehicles leave the base and go off. So that could be something.
Yep.
It could be something. And like I said, wherever the evidence take me is where I'll fall. So I'm just putting that out there. I'm not saying that that's what happened.
No, agreed.
I'm just saying that if you put on your conspiracy hat, it makes sense for that to be something that could have happened. So, we got Terry Hall in the building.
Terry Hall's in
stepped
the
here.
building too.
Hey,
And
Terry
Anonymous
Hall.
Rex is in the house too. Yes, indeed.
Mr. Timmy Tim. Yes, sir. Okay.
Terry's
so we're getting
complimenting my
into
wardrobe, and because I'm representing the underdog South Florida teams that are going to the finals, baby. So
I got Miami, man. Where do you got? How many games are you guys up?
we're up 3-1. We're playing right now, and I believe we're down 18 points, and it's the end of the third. So we're up 3-1 though. So we'll be all right.
Piece of cake. Now here's the I just wanted to show this here just before we move on to the next thing here. So this was Mick West showing that I guess that the lights had, after 19 seconds, to move and change further down the horizon. Now to be fair, that could be simply, if this is a craft, it could be simply the movement of the craft. I mean, if there are lights on the craft, if the craft is moving 19 seconds later, those lights would also be in a different position. So that's still, you can go either way with that. Just take the evidence and then, say what you will. But there was another piece here. You talked about the flares.
Yes.
McWest posted this. So he posted that these were most likely the flares that we're seeing in this photo here that have the parachutes on them. And if you look here, and a lot of people gave Mick a lot of crap for this, they said, okay, the burn time is 4 minutes to 7 minutes, which means that they wouldn't all burn at the same rate, and that you would have them fading out prior to 10 minutes. So, they're saying, hey, you've debunked your own debunking. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So, I don't know. I know the guy in the video stated that this could have went anywhere from 10 minutes to 25 minutes, I think is what they said. So 10 minutes, Yeah, maybe it could be exactly here what Mick West posted. 25 minutes though, that's way out of the range of what these flares are going to do here.
And
So
who's to say they weren't using a new flare that may have a slightly longer life? 10 minutes is only 3 minutes longer than 7. It's not, out of the question that they may change something there. So, and they did say they blinked out, which is another point that I felt supported the flare case. But it all goes back to the possibility that the flares may have been there, but that could have been an attempt to cover up something that preceded it, right? So flares are a great way to cover up triangular crafts if they happen to be, somebody happens to see it, right? Who knows? But yeah, it's a tough one.
Let me go ahead now. Tim Senor sent us a picture of, and I don't know how well because my camera's a little further back, but he took a picture at the black mailbox at Area 51.
Yes.
And I do want to show this because, let me see. Let me move this out here. See if I can get this to show. You can see that. That is the black mailbox. They actually put a black man that's full of stuff, because what tourists do is they come and they leave a little memento. They sign, sometimes they'll sign a little sheet there, little note. They'll leave little tokens and things in the mailbox, and that's what you're supposed to do when you visit the mailbox. So it looks like they've actually brought back an actual black mailbox, because at one point in time that had been stolen.
Yep.
Yeah, so people go out there and steal it, and then they replaced it with a mailbox that was not black. It was a regular, like a white mailbox, but you're going to the black mailbox. So I'm glad they got the black mailbox back out there. And what he's showing us here is the pixels. Oh, okay. Let me look at that again. I can definitely see that. Let me see if we can get that there. Yeah, I was looking at that, and it is pixelated. If you can, let me.
Oh,
see if I can get that.
It looks like something over the top of somebody's leg.
Yeah, if you look on TV, it's to the right.
Mm-hmm.
You can see where it's all pixelated and jagged on the edges. So I guess they took a picture, and they had interference the time that the picture was taken.
Yes.
And not sure what that could be. I think he has stated on Spaced Out Radio that it could have been like surveillance information or surveillance tech. And I wouldn't doubt it, because I've been out there to Area 51, and I will tell you that they're watching you. Just like we showed earlier with Chuck Clark, showing that there are sensors and all sorts of things in the ground on public land. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these sensors that he had uncovered are right there by the black mailbox. I'm sure they are.
Kiera's stating to provide an email, Rob, so that she can send you the raw picture. I have it here too.
Definitely.
I can probably grab it and just save it and send it to you.
You have it, or you can present it if you have it.
No, I don't have it in email, but I'm going to try to see if I can grab it. But go ahead and put your email in the chat, and Kiera will just forward it to you, because she's probably got the raw file, which may even be better. That's probably better than me forwarding this. That way we can look at it. To your point, surveillance and equipment, right? They could have all kinds of radars, various electromagnetic systems to scan you, for lack of a better word, right? And so there you are with your cell phone and whatever other electronics you have on you. When you get hit with a big blast of electromagnetic radiation, be it from a radar or what have you, no doubt it's going to disturb electronics. Trust me. I do this for a living, so I know exactly what sort of things can happen. So that pixel is
frequencies.
The pixelation issue that happened with Kiera's phone is very much could be explained by the fact that they were being scanned, because everybody who shows up at that black mailbox, they don't know. They keep very close eye on what's going on, right? So that doesn't surprise me one bit.
And I'm going to try, if I drop out here, I'm going switching screens to get to my emails. So if I drop out material.
All right, no worries.
Yeah, let me see.
Yeah, no, very interesting. I did watch Tim's UFO report on Spaced Out Radio last night. Tim, nice job. Glad to see you back. And great summary of what happened out there. He did allude to this picture. So thanks for sharing it with us. This is great. So more weirdness going on at the driveway entrance to Area 51.
Yeah. And Outlook just changed its format and I hate it. Oh, let me see. All right. What we'll do, because I actually we'll jump into the next story and then we'll bring that back because I have a video to play. Next story is the Dr. Garry Nolan and the SALT interview. I kind of edited it down. Edited, is that a word? Edited it down.
Yep.
to about 6-7 minutes. So we'll go ahead and run that, and then I'll check on that email here. So
yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and forward it to myself as well, so that it'll hopefully I can get it in my email, and then we can look at it that way.
All right.
I'll present it if you can't get it. But go ahead.
Yeah, great. Okay, here we go.
I believe that extraterrestrial intelligence has visited planet Earth.
I think you can go a step further. It hasn't just visited, it's been here a long time, and it's still here.
If you had to assign a probability to that statement, that you believe extraterrestrial intelligence has visited this planet, what probability would you assign?
100%. The creation of a whistleblowers program specifically that allows people from within, who I'm going to say this, who've been working on the reverse engineering programs, reverse engineering of objects, so that they can come in and break their oaths, but it's specifically just to talk to Congress and give that information in classified settings. And that the most recent one that happened was just last weekend, and it created quite a hornet's nest in Washington.
In your opinion, what do you believe to be the most compelling evidence to support that statement?
Well, I think the most compelling evidence is you just need to look at what your government is doing right now about it. I mean, just go and look at the number of politicians, and this is interesting, on both sides of the aisle who have come together and signed off on this statement. I mean, I was involved last year with putting together some of the wording of the NDAA, which was passed into law. So, I mean, so what are they basing their opinions on? They're basing their opinions on the dozens of individuals who, in one manner or another, have come forward and talked to them in classified settings. If you wanted to study a tribe of cannibals in the middle of the Amazon, are you going to go yourself and show up in the middle of the tribe and not hopefully become dinner on the other side of it? So if you're an advanced intelligence, you know, I don't think we're all that advanced, frankly. You're not going to basically put your life and limb at risk by coming here. So mostly what you're seeing here are either drones or some sort of advanced AI or whatever it is. I mean, look, we're already dealing with an alien intelligence in our own emails, right? Our own ChatGPT, et cetera. We don't even know what it's doing. So imagine if you were a million years ahead of us. How do you have a dialogue with something like that? Or what is it that could possibly do?
Yeah, and I'm glad that we've got some people here to witness these statements. I think they're very consequential. And so we start with now 100% probability of extraterrestrial intelligence. We go to evidence. We now talk about downed craft. We see the government moving in a certain direction. Presumably the downed craft is made of some material. Presumably we could test that material. I know you've done a little bit of work firsthand. You have seen some material. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
We have multiple simultaneous sensor systems that have seen these objects go from 50 feet above the water to up to 14 miles and then back in less than a second. All right? I mean, that's just a truth. The U.S. government has confirmed that these kinds of measurements have done. Now, they're very careful what they say. They say, well, we have no evidence of ET. Well, because, no ET is going to come walking in here and say hello, right? But if you read between the lines on the flip side of it, it does stuff that we can't do. We know that the Russians and the Chinese are not doing. And so if you can go from 0 to 5,000 miles an hour and take a right turn and not end up squished like a bug on the windscreen on the other side, if they have windscreens, then what is the physics that accomplishes that? So what that tells you is that we need to rethink our physics, first of all, to say that, well, we saw birds fly, so it took us 3,000 years and we figured out how to fly. But now we see these things doing this. So what is it that lets us do? So I know some of the physicists on the inside who work at some of these big defense corporations who basically said, oh, well, here's how you tweak even general relativity to accomplish that. But then you say, well, how much energy is needed to do it? Well, more than the whole nuclear output of the planet per day, per movement. So you start to backtrack and you say, okay, well, who could do that? Well, we can't. Will we be able to do it in 1,000 years? But if we had a piece of any of this, let's say it's 1,000 revolutions ahead of us, or 1,000,000 revolutions ahead of us. Even a tiny piece of knowledge from that could revolutionize what it is that we're doing. I'm always looking for the opportunity. I look at the upside of this. I'm not worried about them coming and raiding us or taking our women and children. That's not my concern. My concern is how do we use it? I mean, I could say this. I was working with a group about 7, 8 years ago, and I literally got within a few weeks of gaining access to one of the objects. And when the people who didn't want us to gain access to it found out about it, they pulled some bureaucratic administrative tricks and snatched it away.
That's wild. And so now we have you, Dr. Nolan, making this bold statement. You are well positioned to make this statement. Now maybe we get into some fun. Let's feel comfortable hypothesizing a little bit as to what is happening. What is it, right? And what do you think it is?
Say, look, if you and I can agree that the data is real, irrespective of what the potential conclusions might be, the hypotheses, then the onus is no longer on me to come up with an answer. Now it's also on you. I'm sure some people here at least know what a von Neumann probe is, right? This idea of a self-replicating machine that could have been developed by a technology or a civilization on the other side of the galaxy that even in just a few 100 million years could make its way by conventional means all the way across the galaxy. And when it gets there, it basically builds copies of itself and it does what it's doing, and it basically, some other civilization sent it out. Now, Avi Loeb was here last year, so I'm part of an SAB with Avi Loeb on a company called Copernicus Space Corporation, and guess what? Our objective is to build the first von Neumann probes to go out and spread humanity's original presence across all of reality.
You have to speculate. What do you think it is? Let's be bold.
I think it is an advanced form of intelligence, something that we don't understand, that is using some kind of intermediaries, however it is, like I said about you're not going to end up in the middle of the tribe, the angry monkeys that are flinging muck at each other, or nuclear bombs. You're not going to show yourself in the middle of the angry. You're going to send intermediaries. It's not that they walk amongst us, that wearing a skin suit are actually the alien. Right? No, you're going to basically put something there that is, I think of it as an intelligence test. Can you see what's in front of you for what it really is? Yeah. Can you see the anomalous data point that is there that you realize what it is? When the South American native tribes first saw the Spanish ships coming across the horizon, they didn't realize what it was. They couldn't see it for what it was. So, this is, as I said before, this is the kind of the wow factor. That they're showing up, they're saying, well, who amongst you are intelligent enough to realize what it is that you're looking at? Yeah. They don't have to land on the White House lawn. You just need to show yourself to enough to acculturate. Yeah. Now, if you've been around for a long time, and this is something that I do think has been, they've been around for a long time, they are affecting our culture.
I agree. I think that we need to destigmatize this narrative. We need to share this narrative more broadly. I'm curious, How can we accelerate this?
I think you need to bring together, I mean, this is the part of this professionalization.
Yeah.
You need to bring together the right set of, basically, frankly, anthropologists and sociologists. How do we talk about the fact that we're not at the top of the intellectual food chain, first of all? How do you deal with the religions? Every one of these religions is going to basically look to whatever that is and say, okay, well, what do they believe? Right? We know that the Vatican is involved. I mean, and I'm working with people who are working with the Vatican to basically get them. They've already said, this is very arrogant, they've already said, well, of course they can be Christians. Of course they can have a Jesus. They can be saved. They have a soul. I mean, I think the opportunity is for us to worry about whether they think we're worthy of saving.
Dr. Garry Nolan strikes again. I just, man, I love
like
when he
boom.
gives his input on the topic. I mean, he leaves a lot of credibility to the discussion. A lot of people try to criticize him and say he, speaks from just his belief in UFOs rather than from the scientific aspect of it. What did you think about what he said in this interview?
Strong words. You and I spoke about it already. In past interviews, Dr. Nolan has always left us a lot of breadcrumbs. He would never come right out and say, though, that it was a 100% certainty. He did that this time, which I found quite remarkable. Now, the skeptics have been saying, well, he was talking to a bunch of investors in the audience, and all of the work that he does and the work that others might do that he is supporting, they all need money. So he was really laying it on heavy here to pitch the whole thing for those investors. That's one argument. But if you ignore that for a minute, Dr. Garry Nolan knows the truth, and he's trying to tell us that it is for real. And his evidence is lacking, right? He can't show us the pictures. He can only tell us about it. He can't show us the people that said they had effects from being exposed to UAP. He can tell us about it. So it's anecdotal again. So there's a little bit of a problem. Some people have a bit of a problem with that. But yeah, I do like his assessment too as to what he thinks the phenomenon is. It makes a lot of sense, and I know you're going to get into this in the subsequent story that you wrote about that I thought was outstanding, regarding the whole concept of how does an extremely high-level intelligence interact with a not so intelligent, high-level intelligence, namely humanity. And he talked about that and how the phenomenon are probes or glimpses of things that test us as to what our assessment of it might be. I like that assessment or that theory as to what they're doing and how they're trying to do it. So yeah, if you peel back the onion a little bit there and really listen to what he's saying and where you think he's coming from, there were some significant statements there that I think we all already knew, but this is now proof positive of his stand on it.
And here's the way that I feel. I mean, with a lot of the people that come out like Dr. Garry Nolan and make statements like this, 100%. Now, I can stand behind him on that because once you have an experience, and I think that's a big thing. Like, I know he's right. I know he's right because I saw something that I know could not have been made by anyone on this planet. The thing that I saw and what it did, and until it can be proven otherwise, is not something that we're capable of doing. So when he says that, I'm like, yeah, it is 100%. So it just makes me feel good to see that there are people that have the spotlight that are making those sort of statements and stepping out there like that. So, I thought it was interesting. The whole pitch thing for money. I mean, if we keep thinking on a earthbound level, then everything's going to be explained for money. Just the military money, these guys money. So everything, it ends up being the answer to everything. But like you said, in the next segment here, we're going to get into some things that should make you think outside of that box. Let's think past what we know here on Earth, or what we know in this societal bubble, because it's really not just Earth, it's just the bubble that we've created as society, right? So
Absolutely.
before we jump
before
into
we do that, let's look at the photo.
Yeah, let's look at the photo, because I have it actually on a larger screen, and you can actually see it a lot better here.
I can present. Well, I don't have the high res, but I can present it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll try to present it and see how it looks.
Yeah. That will be great.
This is what I just forwarded from the phone. So go ahead and
let me bring it up here. Let me move the banner here.
I'll leave it on my screen as is, but yeah, you can see clearly here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you can see what looks like some black. I don't know if that's the mailbox itself repeating, or if there was some article
looks
of
like
clothing.
A shirt.
Yeah, it looks like somebody.
I think that's a person.
Something over the. Well, there's clearly a person there wearing blue jeans and
Yeah.
black sneakers, but what ended up over the top of this person doesn't look like it belongs there, right? And maybe a shirt, maybe it is a shirt, but
it's like
okay,
a t-shirt.
maybe it is a shirt. Yeah, just a long shirt, and this was at an angle, so the person was standing. But yeah, you can see the distortion that occurred right on the back of their shirt. Very weird. Kind of a
some sort of interference for sure.
Yeah, like all of these pixels got blurred right here in this one area and nowhere else. So yeah,
and we will be getting the video. Kira says she will send us the video at a later time, so we'll be able to bring it up on the next show.
Sure.
And
but
see
yeah,
the
you
actual
can
video.
definitely see the funniness going on here. It's really weird right in this area, and yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I would say that they were being scanned. You know, everybody who shows up at that mailbox is there
is no doubt they were being scanned.
No, the camo dudes are in their trucks pointing every instrument they've got in that direction. It's like, okay, who's this group now, and what do we have to do with him? You know.
I have a funny. I was actually I went to the mailbox as I came up from Reno and drove through the desert the long way and came through Area 51, and I stopped at the black mailbox and actually was right there at Groom Lake Road. And I started going down Groom Lake Road. It was just me and my girlfriend, and she got scared. She didn't want to go. She was like, "Oh, what are we doing?" I'm like, "We're going to the gate. Let's go see the gate." She got scared, so I had to turn around and go back. But I plan on going to the gate, and then maybe I'll record some stuff for the show there, and we'll see if I get that same interference too when I go. So yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome. Now looking at this, Tim says she's smart. Yeah, I guess so. I'm just that guy that I want to see what happens. I don't want to cross the border. I don't want to Naruto run into Area 51, but yeah, I want to say hi to the camel guys.
There you go.
Hi. So getting into really what this is all about. I mean, so we talked about with Chuck Clark, we kind of painted that picture. And so we're going to move on. We're moving on to the UFO stigma. And it's like, why, right? It's like, why are we looking at it this way? Why can't we have this conversation in a different fashion? And that I kind of thought about this couple weeks back when I wrote all this up. So it was actually, like I was telling you earlier, Mateo, it was kind of crazy that Garry Nolan made some of the comments that he did, because it kind of lines up with something that I had already written prior to him making those statements. So we're going to kind of get into this and some of these talking points that we're going to have, just some questions here. So before we jump into the actual meat, we're going to talk about the UFOs in our skies, or government tech, or adversarial tech. So just a few questions, and maybe we can get people to chime in on this. But how do we get the UFO conversation going outside of just the UFO community? What would be your answer to that, Mateo? What do you think would be the best way for that to happen?
I think we need to, Chuck Clark and the attempts to bring what he has to mainstream media seems to be falling on deaf ears even today, right? Before Tucker Carlson left Fox News, there was a vehicle by which people could get their information out there. This is a tough one. So I think from a grand mass media standpoint, it isn't going to work. I think the only way that we can get the UFO conversation going outside of the UFO community is by us, you, me, everyone in chat, and everyone in our community talking to other people about it that we know. And, be it family, be it friends, be it people, all you have to do is just point out what's going on and say, hey, did you see this? And then you can spark some interest, and that's how it can spread. And the more people who know about it, well, obviously there then becomes more interest in people saying, well, why isn't mass media, the mainstream media, covering this sort of thing? So that's kind of my view, since, coming from the top down doesn't seem to be working. Maybe we need to be more of a bottom up groundswell.
Yes, sir. That's exactly true, and I agree with you on that. And another thing is that a lot of these social media influencers and celebrities who have these super large fan bases, they have the power to send the message to a large group quickly. And I think those people need to come on board as well. Like, you have the Demi Lovato's, you have some of those celebrities out there who kind of speak on it, but we need more. We need more of those people, and I consider them to be on the humanity side because they're ordinary people. But I guess that kind of gets convoluted a little bit, because when you have success and you are on that side, on that financial side of everything, where if finances mean more to you than the progress of humanity, then as we talked about earlier, with the society that we live in, it ends up always coming down to money. So some celebrities will look at that and say, do I really want to give up my stature and my status to speak up on behalf of humanity? And I think that's where the problem that's where they run into a problem. And it's only some of them that say, I don't care about the money, I care more about the people. And I think we just need to find who those people are and get those people on board. But the next question I had is, how can we change the perception of the UFO community as it's being viewed from the outside? We talked about this in other shows. So as far as how at times people who are on the outside of ufology look at this as some sort of religion, and it's due to a lot of the more extreme parts of ufology that they base their perception off of. What do you think about that? What do you say about that?
Well, first off, I want to make sure we invite everybody in the chat to chime in on their answers here, because we're looking. And so please feel free to write in. Yes, we get those of us in the community and who have an interest in this, be it, very historical, as in my case, since I was into this when I was a kid, and now with the post 2017 resurgence, we'll call it. The way you can get the perception to change, I think, is to point out to people who are outside of the community what actually is going on, especially in the government, right? The legislation that was in the 2023 NDAA is proof positive that even Congress people are taking this seriously. So if someone were to come to you and say, you're just all part of a crazy cult who likes to do this and talk about it on YouTube. Yeah, we do, but we're here for a reason. We're here because there is a reality, and if you don't understand it, it's because you haven't looked deeply enough. And let me show you where the government is taking this seriously, and things are going on every day, as Garry Nolan said. People are seeing things every day, and nobody is talking about it, so it goes unnoticed. So I think you just have to point the people who are outside of the community towards the real activity and the real information, and then maybe they'll open their eyes and say, okay, there is something here. You guys aren't a bunch of crackpots and you're not making it up.
Now, with that being said, what would you say is the normal skeptical opinion on why UFOs aren't visiting Earth or couldn't be visiting Earth? What is the normal spiel that skeptics give in that situation?
Just hard evidence. I think everybody wants to see the what's the word, the ultimate photo or the irrefutable evidence, be it a body, a crashed craft, an alien body or a crashed craft or some sort of recovered material, or a crystal clear video of either an alien or of a craft itself. That's why I think people are skeptical. They feel that if there's nothing there that is proof positive by this stage of the game, then it's being made up. That, I think, is where the typical skeptical view
Terry
goes.
Hall makes a good point here. He's going to say this and make a few folks mad, but we can't keep laying our woes at the government's feet. The people in this community, if the people in this community would drop their ego and work together, in this community, we have enough technology to get our own answers, which is true because we know Mateo, Tim Senor, Tom King, Terry Hall, all
everybody
are putting together, for ground roots efforts to gather data on behalf of humanity. And we talked about that before, and that's definitely the way that it needs to go. And I always say, because there's a lot of shows out there that focus on the government. Why won't the government tell us this or that? When you understand they will never do it, it will never happen. So you could waste your time wondering, and they want you to spin your wheels on the Arrow program, or will this come through the next NDAA, and they want you to spend your time worrying about that instead of getting together with your fellow human and putting the puzzle together yourself. It's sleight of hand. It's look over here, and that's what they're doing, and that kicking the can down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt like this, and I definitely feel like that's what they're doing. So Terry Hall is absolutely right on that. And public information can make a big difference. We have all the information. We have everything that we're at. That not weird because I don't worry about the government, but a lot of people, a lot of stuff that they're asking the government for, we do already have. We have experiencers, we have sightings, we have recordings of craft, we just don't have radar data, which, like I said before, UAPRG is collecting that and has already said that they'd be open to sharing it with the people. So I love that. Yeah. Now, with that being said, and this is obviously with all the galaxies out there, just as like we see in this picture, we know that there are other intelligent life out there. So there's really no question about that. But what a lot of people will say in the skeptic community is that, it's not possible for them to get here. It takes too long for them to get here. It takes light years for them to get here. They aren't here, and that's the reason that they use. And we'll kind of break that down in a moment here after we get through these questions, because I think it's a matter of where we are, or as far as our understanding of what this is, like not just the UFO topic, but what all this is, what space is, what this, the entire paradigm, the entire thing that we're looking at here. So um there have been mentioned, and we talked about this, I think, in the last show, that some of these crafts possibly being black government projects, and we kind of agreed that that might be the case. We showed a video with something that some guys had caught out in Texas that was a triangle craft. It was right there on film, and it was flying through the air. It was not a B-2 stealth bomber. So we know for sure that the government has black projects. But I feel like, what came first, the actual UFO or the government black project and commercial drone? Because I feel like the government craft are in response to what they've seen in UFOs. So the UFOs to me came first, and then they mimic their designs off of what they've seen with these ET craft. What do you think about that?
Very possible and highly likely, right? Anything you learn, what do? You imitate the other guy. It happened in World War II. It happened post World War II. If someone has some advanced tech and you don't, what do? You copy it. So, and then you try to enhance it from there. So that is, I totally agree. We are basically trying to reverse engineer what we can and mimic it with our own um, alien reproduction vehicles, as they were called, right? ARVs. And that's really what a lot of this probably amounts to, a lot of those black projects that we see.
And what, as we'll talk about in a future show, I believe the next show, you look at pictographs or hieroglyphs and pictographs and all these things that depict ET craft from ancient human history. So we know that those craft and those designs have been coming around for years. So we know that the ET crafts came first. Now, Be More Dan makes a lot of sense here, saying too many peeps trying to isolate info and or trying to make a name for themselves must have unity. And Mattel, that's what we preach here. Like, we don't do this for any sort of fame or any sort of, like, we know everything or I'm that guy. We don't do that.
We're
This
here
is a
because we like to be with the like-minded people like Be More Dan and everyone else in the chat. We're here for that reason, and we're not trying to say we're right and you're wrong or everyone else is wrong. I compliment everybody who contributes to this field, but yes, there's a lot of negativity that tends to penetrate the whole effort, and people get caught up in the wrong aspect. We're not about that here.
Yeah, who's really pushing for? I mean, a lot of people say they're pushing for disclosure, but like I said before, I always ask the question to talk show host or podcast host, like, what's the plan after disclosure? Because our focus here is on humanity, and once disclosure happens, humanity still continues. So we're here to try to find the best path forward for humanity and do this together as a group. So Be More Dan was right on point with that comment there. But yeah, as far as that goes, the last question I have before we jump into the last piece is, do we even really understand what reality is? Like, everybody tries to say, oh, this is impossible. It's not reality. It's not real. Like, do we even understand what reality is? When you look at that picture, James Webb Telescope is pretty much about to rewrite the science books, showing us that the Big Bang Theory is probably needs to be revised or rethought. So, with that being the case, do we even understand what it is that we're looking at? Like, do we know? Can we see outside of the bubble that we live in, Mattel? What do you think about that? What's your response to that?
Magnificent point, Rob. And the answer is no, we can't yet. We're just starting to get a looking glass into that. And your point about the JWST and its findings, which I'm a huge fan of, they're now wondering why galaxies were so well formed so soon after the Big Bang. And so now the question is well, maybe the universe isn't 13.7 billion years old. Maybe it's older. Maybe something else was going on prior to the Big Bang. It's so, we're learning more every day. I was watching a podcast the other day on the Merged podcast, and Dr. Matthew from the SCU and UAPX was on there, and he said 10 years ago, we thought 20 years ago, we knew there was only one exoplanet. Now we know there are 8,000. So the point is, we're learning all day, every day, and our concept of reality is certainly in a state of flux. So no, we cannot say intergalactic travel is impossible, because we really don't know. So
We just don't know.
we just don't know. The people who say that they can't get here because it's impossible, we don't know that.
And that's why I say, using common sense, can't we, using just common sense, just the common sense that you were given, couldn't we all agree on both sides of the argument? Couldn't we all agree that as humans, that we are simply nowhere close to understanding what the possibilities and limitations of this universe are?
Not even close. And
like,
this
not
is
even close.
This is why Dr. Nolan talked about in that SALT conference how the intelligence that's 10,000 years ahead of us, and that's probably lowballing it, isn't going to expose themselves, so to speak, directly, because we won't be able to understand. So what they're doing is they're trying to lead us along to the point where we may be able to. And to your point earlier, Rob, once we have this knowledge that we are not alone and that there is someone else out there, all of humanity is going to change in a very dramatic and beneficial way. And that's what we need to keep pushing for. Because once you do that, then you can see we transcend to the next level, where those advanced civilizations will want to engage with us. Right now, we are not worthy of being engaged with, because I hate to say this, but we humans behave real badly, and we all know that. We still are very primitive in our behavior. And only until we can step beyond that, and will they engage, and will we be able to move to that next level?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I want to get into that. You said primitive, and it's actually a great point. And actually, Terry Hall disclosure, I think it's the point of confirmation. And
yes.
What else is there disclosed? And I agree. And I meant to say confirmation, because Dave Scott said confirmation, and I ride with that. I mean, I think that is definitely a better word to use. But if someone else said disclosure, the word is just so tied into ufology that it's without thinking, it's something that comes out your mouth. We are preschoolers, Kira. You must be reading my mind. Watch where we go from here. You are definitely on top of it. So getting into the next part of this, and it, just as Kira said, and we're going to kind of go off of that as well. This was another point. So Voyager 1 and 2, right? They've been traveling at 36,000 miles per hour for 45 years, and will still continue to travel for infinity. As far as we understand, we look at space, and as far as what people believe today, that space is infinite. Can you even wrap your mind around infinity? Like, with everything has a beginning and an end here on Earth. So if we can even pose the idea that space is infinite, that shows you that we just don't understand anything that's going on, because you can't even wrap your mind around infinity. You can't do it. You can't.
Voyager 1 and 2 haven't even gotten off the dime yet. as far as infinity is concerned, right?
Yeah, they're barely left the solar system. So
Right.
they are on the outskirts of the solar system, and they've been traveling at this speed for 45 years straight. So that just puts that into perspective on there's no way we can understand what it is that we're living in. And so that kind of takes us into our next piece here. So North Sentinel Island, and I don't know how many people out there really know the story behind North Sentinel Island, but it's a good place to look at as far as understanding, uh, putting in perspective where it is we are currently versus being able to look 70,000 years essentially into our past and seeing what the effect is of being brought forward into the future technologically. So I'm going to read real quick from about North Sentinel Island and the tribe that's there. So the enigmatic tribe of North Sentinel Island. It's a tale of isolation from modern civilization. So, human civilization has flourished through interconnectedness, communication, and cultural exchange. However, nestled in the Bay of Bengal, the North Sentinel Island stands as a testament to the exception to this rule. Home to the Sentinelese people, one of the world's most isolated tribes, the island has remained remarkably detached from modern civilization. Now, we're going to explore circumstances that have kept the Sentinelese disconnected from the outside world, examining the implications of their isolation and the delicate balance between preserving their way of life and respecting their autonomy. So, located in the Ottoman archipelago, the North Sentinel Island is part of the Union Territory of Andaman and the Nicobar Islands, India. This small island, covering an area of 72 square kilometers, is surrounded by treacherous coral reefs and dense forests, acting as a natural barrier against external influences. The Sentinelese people are believed to be direct descendants of the first human migrations from Africa, making their history on the island span thousands of years. So thousands of years isolated on this island. The Sentinelese have intentionally and fiercely resisted contact with the outside world for centuries. Hostile encounters with outsiders have been met with aggression, preventing anthropologists, explorers, and government officials from establishing peaceful communication. The resistance to this contact has been interpreted as a strong desire to protect their unique cultural identity and maintain their traditional way of life. Just kind of see what these guys look like here. So the Sentinelese society is believed to be a hunter-gatherer in nature, relying on the abundant resources provided by their pristine island environment. Their language, customs, and rituals have remained intact, free from the influence of modern technologies, religions, and social structures. The preservation of their cultural heritage is essential as it serves as a testament to diverse array of human lifestyles that have thrived throughout history. Now, in recognition of the Sentinelese people's right to self-determination and their desire to remain isolated, the Indian government has adopted a policy of non-interference. Sounds familiar, right? So the Indian authorities enforce a restricted zone around that island, protecting both the tribe and the outsiders from potential harm. This policy aims to safeguard the tribe's autonomy and preserve their unique cultural practices while also ensuring their physical safety and well-being. Now, the case of the Sentinelese presents complex ethical and moral dilemmas. On one hand, respecting their isolation and autonomy upholds their rights as a distinct indigenous group. On the other hand, their isolation exposes them to potential vulnerabilities, such as diseases for which they may not have no immunity. Striking a balance between non interference and responsibility to protect vulnerable populations requires careful consideration and engagement with the wider anthropological and humanitarian communities. As the world becomes increasingly interconnected, the Sentinelese continue to exist as a remarkable exception. Their isolation raises important questions about cultural diversity, human rights, and the impact of modernization on indigenous communities. In the future, it will be crucial to ensure that any interactions with the Sentinelese, if they occur, are guided by respect, mutual understanding, and the preservation of their cultural heritage. So the Sentinelese tribe of North Sentinel Island stands as a testament to the resilience of human isolation, challenging our notions of connectivity and the globalized world. Their self-imposed detachment from modern civilization has preserved a unique way of life, allowing us to contemplate the delicate balance between cultural preservation and the rights of indigenous peoples. The ongoing challenge lies in navigating the ethical complexities of engaging with the Sentinelese while ensuring their autonomy and safety. And so this will go right into a write-up that I had done on this topic here. So the Sentinelese, so the UFOs and the possibility of ET visitation put into perspective by written by myself. So the way I look at it, and I'll go ahead and bring this out here. So I look at it as science being a field based on theories. These theories are often rescinded or recalibrated over time. This is the equivalent to learning on the job. Now, on a galactic universal scale, using our school structure for perspective, Kira, we are probably still in elementary school scientifically. How can such a young, unstable thought process be the logic to base our beliefs on what's possible versus impossible? So, as space appears to be infinite, as we talked about earlier, why do we allow our earthly understanding to put limits on what might be possible? We talked about Voyager 1 and 2, as they have been traveling through space at roughly 36,000 miles per hour nonstop for almost 50 years and might continue to travel for infinite years to come. Our own earthly history as humanity can actually help paint the picture of how we should look towards possibilities as humanity. A perfect look back into time when humanity was a primitive hunter-gatherer would be to look at this tribe of North Sentinel Island, a tribe cut off from modern civilization. Now, was their belief that nothing else existed outside of that island that they've evolved on for the last 70,000 years? Did they ever consider that the ocean-filled horizon could lead to a bustling high-tech new world? What were their thoughts when they first saw ships and helicopters and planes come into view for the first time? Most likely, this started with one person or a small group having a sighting. Did they know who or what was inside these strange crafts? Did they ever consider the fact that they were actually being visited by beings that were thousands of years more advanced technologically? Did they also have a limit on their understanding of relative distance and speed of travel? I would think so. Did they experience stigma over generations from those who just didn't believe or didn't have the experience of seeing these crafts? Now, this tribe did experience a rapid evolution once contact was actually made. Now, to put this all back into perspective, the Earth is that isolated island, and humanity is that tribe looking out over the vast ocean of space. We too currently have a limit on our understanding of relative distance versus speed of travel. And we too are being visited by strange crafts we don't understand. Now, these crafts also possibly carry beings and represent technologies that are thousands, possibly millions of years more advanced. And like that tribe on North Sentinel Island, once contact is made, we too just might evolve and be propelled far into the future. So, as humans on Earth, one thing we can all agree on as we go through life is it's the one thing we've all said at some point, looking back on our adolescence, which is, boy, if I only knew then what I know now. Point being, comparatively, humanity is still in its adolescence and we will forever be learning and understanding things for millennia to come. What do you think about that, Mateo? What do you think on the outlook on that?
Bravo, bravo, Rob. That you shared your write-up with me before you presented it, and I thought it was outstanding, and you delivered it magnificently there. Very, very deep, very, very thought. The thought behind what you did there is enormous, and it's huge, and it is so pertinent to right here, right now. You basically painted the picture of the microcosm, earthbound, I'll say, example of an advanced technology and a not so advanced technology that has no concept of us, has no concept of what could or might be. We are the Sentinelese. We do not know what is or what could be or where we're headed as far as what knowledge lies ahead of us. And we're just getting to the point now where we're intrigued and we want to find out what that is. The Sentinelese lived for thousands of years not wanting to make contact with the outside world. And they probably still, to a certain degree, feel that way. But the more that people see flying over their island, the more that the younger generation is probably like, gee, I wonder what that is, as you said so eloquently. I wonder who's flying, who's inside of that craft. What's going on there? Perfect. This is exactly us with respect to the ETs, if we want to refer to them that way. And they are us trying not to interfere with what's going on that Sentinel Island. It's a tough dilemma, right? I always like to go back, since I'm an original old Star Trek fan. The prime directive on Star Trek was non-interference, those who remember, right? So when they would go to these planets that may have been way back in time or way far less advanced than they were, the whole point was, don't change what's going on here. Try not to interfere. And I'm sure that's the prime directive of most of the alien phenomenon or the ET phenomenon that we're engaged with. There was one other article that I read about the Sentinel Island that brings up an interesting point and another parallel. The Indian government was worried about poachers and people who might go in and plunder the island. Have we heard about different species of ETs, some of whom may come here and say, geez, we don't want to interfere, we want to help these people along? And then there might be other species of ETs who may want to plunder the planet.
Exactly.
There's yet another parallel, right?
Exactly.
So that is exactly what could be going. That is exactly what's going on with us. And we're like us, we're not going to go in and show up on their leadership's their leaders' front lawn, like we always joke about the U.F.O landing on the White House lawn. We're not going to show up on Sentinel Island's leadership front lawn and declare our existence and say, here we are, have an iPhone, right? We're not going to do that. And the ETs aren't going to do that with us either. They can't, because we wouldn't know how to handle it and we wouldn't know how to react. And there would be, it wouldn't go well. But can we be led along gradually and reach that new and higher level? Yes. And that's, I think, the path that we're on. So bravo once again. I really liked your presentation.
Yeah, definitely. And it's more so, like I say, we just try to, when we do these shows, we just try to present things in a way that's palatable for and easy to understand for both sides of the conversation, because we walk in the middle. We want both sides to talk, and we want to not just look at this in using just our earthly understanding, but understanding that we are on the precipice of being galactic beings at this point. Like, we're already traveling out into space. So this is now a reset. This is us as consider ourselves primitive because we're adolescents as humanity is concerned, and we're starting at the beginning again. And the Sentinelese tribe is a current modern day example of where it is or how this is transitioning in front of us. So the ocean is now this vast infinity of space, what we consider to be infinity, and we're seeing these strange crowds just like they did. And the whole idea is that we don't know what we don't know until we figure out or find out what's going on here. So you should be open to all possibilities, both sides.
Yep.
So with that being said, we're gonna get into our last or 1 second to last segment here, which is when you hear that music, that's when we get into, if I can get it up here, yeah. That's when we get into our Once Upon a Time in Ufology. And we're going to be rolling with the Condon report that I think is so important for people to understand that what has happened, what's happening now has happened before. So with that being said, with the Condon report, officially known as a scientific study of unidentified flying objects, was a comprehensive scientific investigation into UFOs commissioned by the United States and the Air Force in 1966, led by Dr. Edwin U. Condon, a respected physicist. The study aimed to evaluate existing UFO reports and determine whether further scientific research into the phenomenon was justified. The Condon Committee, also called the University of Colorado UFO Project, consisted of a team of scientists, psychologists, and military personnel. Some notable individuals involved in the committee were 1. Dr. Edward Condon, 2. Dr. Robert J. Lowe, 3. Dr. David Sanders, 4. Dr. Roy Craig, and 5. Lieutenant Colonel William T. Coleman. Now, these individuals, along with other experts, formed the core team responsible for conducting the study and preparing the final report. The Condon report's conclusion, published in 1968, was that there was no scientific evidence to support the existence of extraterrestrial spacecraft visiting Earth. The report emphasized that the majority of UFO sightings could be attributed to misidentifications of ordinary phenomena such as aircrafts, weather balloons, or astronomical objects. It is suggested that further scientific study of UFOs would be unlikely to yield significant scientific value, and recommended the termination of the U.S. Air Force Project Blue Book, which had been investigating UFO sightings. Now, as you may or may not know, I'm sure if you're in ufology, you know this, but in January 1967, Condon stated in a lecture that he thought that the government should not study UFOs because the subject was nonsense, adding, "But I'm not supposed to reach that conclusion for another year." And in his introductory conclusions and recommendations, Condon wrote, "Our general conclusion is that nothing has come from the study of UFOs in the past 21 years that has added to scientific knowledge. Careful consideration of the record as it is available to us leads us to conclude that further extensive study of UFOs probably cannot be justified in the expectation that science will be advanced thereby." He also recommended against the creation of a government program to investigate UFO reports. Now, the Condon report's conclusion was met with mixed reactions, while many scientists and skeptics accepted the report's findings as a scientific assessment. Some UFO enthusiasts and researchers criticized it, arguing that the study was biased or failed to consider certain unexplained cases. Nevertheless, the Condon report has significant impact on the public perception and official investigations on UFOs, leading to a decline in government-funded studies and a shift towards scientific skepticism when evaluating UFO claims. And then, so what I say to that is, this is where and why the stigma around UFOs began. This right here. And it persists to this day. Most things are considered impossible until one day you realize that these things are actually possible. Just ask anyone in science. a field where the goal lines are moved and theories are changed every 50 years, give or take. What do you got to say about that?
Well, my view is a little different. I feel that you brought up a valid point that reflects, history and what was going on in the present day very well. The Condon Report was a government-sponsored program and investigation that was deliberately done to debunk UFOs and to ridicule the topic. And Condon was the perfect person for it because he was already predispensed as to what his conclusion was going to be, as he cited in that lecture that I honestly believe was true. Arrow. Fast forward to 2023, and here we are with Arrow. What did Sean Kirkpatrick do in the last congressional hearing with Senator Gillibrand? He predicted his own demise, right? He predicted the end of Arrow. He said, well, eventually this office will no longer be necessary. Why did he do that? It's because they want to take the topic, and what Arrow is doing, which is, as we've learned from that hearing, is extremely narrow and extremely focused on just the cases that they choose to investigate, and they want to turn everything into some sort of prosaic explanation. What is that going to do? It'll end up doing what the Condon Report did. It'll take the public off track of what the reality is and make everyone think nothing to see here. Definitely. So I think that's what, as Terry Hall pointed out earlier, we have to stop laying our problems at the feet of the government. They're not going to come out and tell us anything, because if they did, then 75 years of cover-up and obfuscation will have to come out, and they'll have to answer to that. And sadly, they'll have no answer. They'll be guilty as charged. So it ain't gonna happen. So yeah,
ain't gonna happen.
Ain't gonna happen.
I love that. And shout out to Dave Scott, Space Out Radio, coming through, man. I really appreciate you,
Thank you, Dave,
showing up here, Dave. And so with that being said, this was Once Upon a Time Ufology, and we're going to go ahead and jump into our last segment, which is Science Fiction, Science Fact, Movie Edition. Oh no, why that popped up?
Must Science be those darn aliens again.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
So what we got for that is UFOs are real. I don't know. Have you seen this?
I actually, since you tipped me off as to what you were going to do, I went back and watched part of it, and I did see it once. It's actually a great documentary, with Stanton Friedman and a whole bunch of other famous historical figures in there, basically talking about everything we talk about today. That's the reason you always bring up movies like this. It's like you watch it again. It's like, hey, this was done, 30 years ago?
40 years ago.
43,
44 years ago. And everything was on point, on topic, on subject, everything they talked about. And you have to think about this. This is 79, so it was Roswell's 47. So this is 32 years after Roswell. And so this is at a time when this was our first go around. And that's why I say we talked about the Condon Report and that being where the stigma started, because prior to that, there was no stigma. People just were seeing craft that they couldn't explain. And there was no stigma there. The stigma was created when the Condon Report, and they came out and said scientifically that this is not. And so because of that, that's where the stigma started, right? Yeah. But if you watch this, you see that all the accounts that they talk about, you can relate those to the accounts that are happening today. And it's like one of the most, as far as older documentaries go, it was just from front to back, the entire documentary had you on the edge of your seat with the cases that they covered.
Jesse Marcel was in there, which was great. he was given his firsthand account of what happened. Betty Hill was in there, giving her account. I mean, this was the real deal.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give you a synopsis of it. So, UFOs Are Real is a documentary film released in 1979 that delves into the phenomenon of unidentified flying objects and presents evidence suggesting their existence. Directed by an investigative filmmaker, the documentary explores various cases and testimonials from credible sources, aiming to shed light on the reality of UFO encounters and the challenging social skepticism. The film features interviews with notable individuals who have firsthand experiences or possess expertise in UFO research. Those individuals include Dr. J. Allen Hynek, a renowned astronomer and former scientific advisor to the U.S. Air Force's Project Blue Book. Dr. Hynek discusses his transition from skepticism to acceptance of UFO phenomenon and highlights compelling cases he has investigated. Major Donald Kehoe, a former Marine Corps aviator and prominent UFO investigator. Major Kehoe shares his insights into government cover-ups and the suppression of UFO information. Betty Hill, as you mentioned, one half of the famous Betty and Barney Hill abduction case. Betty recounts her and her husband's alleged encounter with extraterrestrial beings and the subsequent investigation. Then we have the late, great Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist and prominent UFO researcher. Friedman discusses his investigations into UFO sightings, including the examination of physical evidence and witness testimony. Now, the documentary incorporates archival footage, eyewitness accounts, and expert analysis to present a compelling case for the existence of UFOs. It explores various aspects of UFO encounters, including sightings, abductions, and government secrecy, aiming to provoke thoughtful consideration, and open-mindedness regarding the unexplained aerial phenomenon. Yeah, so once again, UFOs Are Real. You can catch it on YouTube, actually. I'll put a link in the description. It's actually totally, completely free on YouTube. If you type in UFOs Are Real 1979, you'll get this to come up. It's about an hour and a half. It's a great watch. I definitely recommend that you guys go and check it out if you haven't seen it. It's one of the, even compared to documentaries that they're putting out today, this is crushing. This is crushing a lot of the stuff that's coming out today. So definitely recommend that you guys go watch that. Yeah,
I won't spoil it, but there's a couple of there are actually tidbits of information in this documentary that I forgot all about that aren't covered in the more modern takes. You know, we've seen modern movies like James Fox's Phenomenon, which was a great summary of UFO history. In this documentary that you brought up here, there's some great stuff, like especially Jesse Marcel and what he did to some of the material he recovered that I forgot all about. And it was awesome. So yeah, definitely a good watch.
Definitely. So with that being said, I think I had one more reminder here, and actually we'll just do that after this. So let's go ahead and close out a science fiction science fact movie edition, then we can get ready to cruise out of here. All right, so with that being said, this is the music we go home to. And I did have one other thing I wanted to show everybody, because like we stated on the last show, regardless what you think about Dr. Stephen Greer, there is the upcoming the Disclosure 2.0 conference that's going on in Washington, D.C. So if you have a chance, if you can get out there and represent, go ahead and do it. They're doing it at the National Press Club, same place that they did it at back in, what was that, 2001? I think it was about 20 years ago.
Yep.
So yeah, if you can show up, this is what we need to do. We have to, as humanity, we have to step up to the plate. If we want to get to where we want to go to, we're gonna have to put in some of the work. We can't just sit at the house and just think that things are gonna happen. What do you have to say about the Disclosure 2.0? What's your view on that?
I love it. I mean, if you love Dr. Stephen Greer or hate him, you got to give him credit for doing this and bringing it together. And this is right on the threshold of what could be the next House of Representatives committee hearing on UAP that Tim Burchett has been talking about, which I believe was either going to be on the 12th or the 13th or something like that of June. So that week is going to be a very busy week. So if any of us can get to Washington, D.C. to participate in either or both of those events, that would be awesome. It should be a very revealing week.
Yeah, and just like you said, I mean, there were rumors, I don't know how true they are. Obviously, we're getting closer to finding out, but Ross Coulthard has stated, and others have stated, that potentially we're going to have some House hearings coming up in June. So at the very least, this should be something that I hope those representatives are watching so that they can understand who they need to call to these hearings, because it's not the people that they're calling right now. So and that's just a fact. So outside of that, let's go ahead and get this all set up to get out of here. I want to definitely go through the comments here. Thank everybody that showed up and supported the show today, which would be Kira, I Am, Be More Dan, Anonymous Rex, Tim Senor. Hope we get to see you soon here on the show. Mr. Terry Hall, Dogface, appreciate you. Good day. Appreciate you. We had, let's see, we had anybody else in there? I think that
Be More Dan. And
I got Be More Dan. Oh, Grandmaster UV. Appreciate you stopping by, and just going back to see if I'm missing anyone. I appreciate everybody who showed up.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. No, it's like that's it. So yeah, thank you. Said we've been off for a couple weeks. So shaking the cobwebs off, but we'll be back even better than ever next episode. Please come and check us out. Outside of that, do you have anything to say to the people, Mateo?
Just thank you, and glad to be here, and glad that everybody participated tonight. This was awesome. So thank you for that, and awesome job once again to you, Rob. You got it going on here, and the content has been awesome, and I always come away learning something new. So thanks for that.
Yep, no problem. So thanks everybody for coming to the Social Dig. That's the engineer, Mr. Mateo. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. You guys take care.